Welcome back to G Fun Facts Online. Today, we are diving into a discovery that challenges everything we thought we knew about the giants of the ocean. We often treat the sea as a place where the big discoveries have already been made. We assume that while we might find a new tiny shrimp in a deep trench, the megafauna, the whales, the sharks, and the rays are all accounted for. But in July 2025, that assumption was shattered. Science formally described a third species of manta ray, hiding in plain sight off the coast of the Americas. It is called Mobula yarae, the Atlantic manta ray. This isn't just a new entry in a textbook. It is a profound example of evolution in action happening right now on our coastlines. Over the next 20 minutes, we are going to break down how this massive animal evaded detection for centuries, the genetic detective work that revealed it, and why its discovery rewrites the rules of marine conservation. To understand the significance of Mobula yarae, we have to look at the history of how we classify these animals. For a very long time, humanity believed there was only one type of manta ray. If you saw a giant ray with cephalic fins, those horn-like lobes on its head, it was just classified as manta barostris. It wasn't until fairly recently, in 2009, that Dr. Andrea Marshall, a pioneer in this field, proved that there were actually two distinct species. There was the giant oceanic manta, Mobula barostris, which travels the open high seas, and the reef manta, Mobula alfredi, which tends to stay closer to resident reef systems in the Indo-Pacific. That split was a major breakthrough. But even after 2009, there was a problem. Researchers working in the western Atlantic, specifically off the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, the coast of Florida, and down toward Brazil, kept seeing mantas that didn't fit the mold. These animals were living in the Atlantic, so they should have been the oceanic giant manta. But they looked different, they were smaller, their markings were strange. For 15 years, these creatures were listed in scientific papers as Mobula cf barostris. That little cf stands for confer, which is scientific shorthand for, it looks like this species but we are not actually sure. It took until 2025 for the mystery to be solved. A team led by Brazilian researcher Nayara Buquer and the Marine Megafauna Foundation used advanced genomic analysis to prove that these Atlantic rays were effectively genetically isolated from their oceanic cousins. They named it Mobula yarae, after Yara, the mother of waters in Tupi-Guarani mythology. This was a fitting name for a creature that has reigned over the Atlantic coasts long before modern civilization arrived. But the discovery raises a massive question. How does a 6-meter animal hide from science? The answer lies in the concept of cryptic speciation. This is a phenomenon where two distinct species are erroneously classified as one because they look nearly identical to the human eye. In the ocean, this is surprisingly common. On land, species separate because of hard barriers, a mountain range rises up, or a river cuts through a landscape, physically separating two groups of animals until they evolve into different species. That is called allopatric speciation. But the ocean appears continuous. There are no walls. So marine divergence is often driven by soft barriers, invisible walls made of water temperature, depth, currents, and prey availability. This is exactly what happened with Mobula yarae. While the giant oceanic manta is a circumglobal wanderer, traversing the deep, cold, abyssal plains, the Atlantic manta is a specialist. It evolved to exploit the continental shelf, the murky, nutrient-rich waters where the land meets the sea. The genetic evidence suggests that Mobula yarae is a sister taxon to the oceanic manta, but the split is incredibly recent in geological terms. We are talking about a divergence that happened perhaps 100,000 to 500,000 years ago. In evolutionary biology, this makes Mobula yarae one of the youngest large vertebrate species known to science. It is what we call an incipient species. The genetic distance is small, but it is consistent. There is no significant gene flow between the two groups, even though they swim in the same waters. This condition, where two species overlap geographically but remain distinct, is known as sympatry. So if they are swimming in the same ocean, what stops them from mating? The mechanism here is likely ecological speciation. It comes down to lifestyle. The oceanic manta is built for the high seas. It dives to frigid depths of over 1,000 meters. The Atlantic manta, however, prefers the fluctuating, productive waters of the coast. This difference in habitat preference reduces the chances of them encountering one another during critical mating periods. Even when they do cross paths, perhaps at a cleaning station where fish remove parasites from their skin, they don't interbreed. This suggests they have developed pre-zygotic barriers. These could be behavioral differences, like a different courtship dance, or sensory differences, like incompatible pheromones. The genetics show distinct mitochondrial lineages, which are passed down from mothers. This tells us that female Atlantic mantas are staying coastal. They aren't mixing with the oceanic population. There is also a theory about how this started, involving the founder effect. During the ice ages, sea levels dropped, and ocean circulation changed dramatically. It is possible that an ancestral population of mantas got cut off in a specific Atlantic basin or coastal refuge. Isolated from the global gene pool, this smaller group experienced rapid genetic drift, evolving unique traits to survive in that restricted environment. When the ice melted and the oceans reconnected, these rays were sufficiently different that they no longer recognized the oceanic mantas as potential mates. We see a parallel to this in hammerhead sharks. In the western North Atlantic, geneticists found a cryptic lineage of scalloped hammerhead that lives exclusively in coastal waters, hiding inside the global population. It seems the complex geography of the Americas, with the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and massive river outflows like the Amazon and Mississippi, creates a mosaic of habitats that drives this kind of rapid evolution. Now, let's get into the details of identification. If you are a diver or a marine enthusiast, how do you tell Mobula yarae apart from the giant oceanic manta? While genetics provided the proof, morphology, the physical study of the animal, gives us the visual clues. The most reliable field mark is on the back, specifically the shoulder patches. On the giant oceanic manta, the white shoulder patches form distinct triangles that create a T-shape against the black background. But on the Atlantic manta, Mobula yarae, those patches are curved, they hook. Researchers have described them as resembling the logo of the car company Tesla, or forming a soft V-shape. They flare outwards more dramatically than the rigid triangles of the oceanic species. You can also look at the belly. The oceanic manta usually has a white belly with sparse spots and distinctive dark shading around the mouth and gill slits. The Atlantic manta, by contrast, has a duskier, more speckled belly. The spots are clustered heavily around the abdomen, like a splash of dark freckles, and the area around the mouth is usually paler. Then, there is the size. While Mobula birostris is a true giant, reaching disc widths of over 7 meters, the Atlantic manta is somewhat smaller, typically maximizing at 4 to 5 meters. It is still massive, but it lacks the colossal bulk of the largest oceanic rays. Microscopically, they even have different skin. Their dermal denticles, the scale-like structures on their skin, are structurally distinct. This suggests they have different hydrodynamics, one built for long-distance cruising, the other perhaps for more maneuverable coastal movements. Ecologically, Mobula yarae is a creature of the upwelling zones. Its distribution maps perfectly onto areas of high productivity, the flower garden banks in the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean coast off Mexico near Isla Holbox, and down the Brazilian coastline. These are areas where cold, nutrient-rich water rises from the deep, triggering massive plankton blooms. Mobula yarae is a filter feeder that chases these blooms. Unlike the oceanic manta, which might chase ephemeral food patches across the open ocean, the Atlantic manta seems to have a smaller home range, moving seasonally between these reliable coastal banquets. In places like the Yucatan, you can actually see both species, but studies suggest they are segregating their niches. They might visit the feeding grounds at different times, or feed on different things. Isotope analysis of their tissues hints that Mobula yarae feeds on nearshore, estuarine-influenced plankton, while the oceanic manta shows signatures of offshore feeding. This niche segregation is critical. It allows two massive animals to coexist without outcompeting each other. But this discovery brings with it a heavy responsibility. The formal description of Mobula yarae radically changes the conservation landscape. Previously, all these rays were managed under the umbrella of the giant oceanic manta, which is already endangered. But by recognizing Mobula yarae as a separate species, we have effectively cut the population estimate in half. We now have two smaller populations instead of one large one, and smaller populations are inherently more vulnerable to extinction. Furthermore, Mobula yarae doesn't have a global safety net. If the oceanic manta disappears from the Atlantic, it still exists in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. But Mobula yarae is endemic to the Western Atlantic. If it is wiped out here, it is gone forever. And its habitat puts it in extreme danger. Because it lives in the coastal zone, it is swimming in the urban ocean. The single greatest threat is fisheries bycatch. The waters of Brazil, Venezuela, and the United States are heavily fished. Swimming in shallow waters, Mobula yarae is frequently entangled in gill nets meant for tuna or shrimp. In Brazil, artisanal fisheries have historically landed large numbers of these rays. Then, there are vessel strikes. Florida is a nursery hotspot for this species, but it is also the boating capital of the world. As surface feeders, these rays are often oblivious to speedboats, and propeller scars are a common sight on individuals in this region. Add to this the pollution from agricultural runoff from the Mississippi and Amazon rivers, which introduces pesticides and heavy metals into their food web. Since they are high-order filter feeders, they bioaccumulate these toxins. Climate change is the final multiplier. If warming oceans disrupt the seasonal upwellings they rely on, they face starvation. This means we need to rewrite international protection laws. The IUCN Red List will need to assess Mobula yarae separately, and given its restricted range and high exposure to threats, it will likely be classified as endangered or critically endangered. Regulators enforcing CITES trade bans now need to be trained to distinguish the gill plates of this new species from others. Countries like the US and Brazil must recognize that they are stewards of a unique species, which increases the pressure to establish marine protected areas in critical nursery grounds. In conclusion, the discovery of Mobula yarae is a gift to science. Usually, we study speciation by looking at fossils or deep genetic splits from millions of years ago. With the Atlantic manta, we are watching evolution in real time. The split is so recent that the species are still sorting themselves out. It challenges the old notion that the ocean is a slow-changing, homogeneous environment. Instead, it depicts a marine world that is dynamic, where biodiversity is constantly being generated in the productive margins of the continents. It also forces us to wonder, what else is out there? If a 5-meter ray can remain hidden until 2025, our counts of marine species are likely severe underestimates. We call this shadow biodiversity. We may be losing species we don't even know exist yet. As we look at these rays now, gliding through the emerald waters of the Atlantic, their V-shaped shoulders marking them as unique, we are witnessing the living, breathing creativity of the natural world. The naming of Mobula yarae, after a mythological siren, is poetic. It has existed in the twilight between myth and reality for centuries. Now that it has emerged into the light of scientific fact, the challenge is to ensure that this newly written chapter does not end in tragedy. Thanks for listening to G Fun Facts Online, and remember to look beneath the surface. There is always more to discover.